Hello everyone, and welcome to this screencast. I'm going to be telling you how the EPQ works in the DES sixth form, and I'm going to call this first session the Research Skills course, because you do not start the EPQ proper in DESC until you've actually qualified for it, as I'll explain to you in a moment. Now, I have a video here on my YouTube channel. If you're doing the EPQ, you need to look at my YouTube channel. There are 40 videos on the EPQ there, as well as a SharePoint site that I've created to help you. So these are going to be your go-to places where a lot of the skills are covered in a great deal of detail. Now, firstly, what I wanted to explain to you is that in order to start the EPQ, you first have to write a research proposal of at least 1,500 words. Now, the rationale for this is that you need to be the kind of student who is going to thrive on the EPQ. So as you can see from my calendar for this term, we've recruited the students, and now the lessons begin in week 2. And this screencast is going to give you some of the essential information that you need. So during the course of the first term, you're going to learn a whole variety of skills like the use of JSTOR, note-taking, how to write a research question, etc. And then in week 9, you're going to begin writing a research proposal. In order to get onto the EPQ course for term 2, you are going to need to finish this research proposal and show it to your supervisor and your EPQ teacher. So I want to make it really clear that you do need to meet certain expectations and standards to be on the EPQ. And one of the things I'm going to be emphasizing in this particular lesson right from the get-go is you should only be on the EPQ if you want to be here. Nobody is asking you to be here. Nobody is forcing you to be here. You are here purely voluntarily. So what kind of a student are we looking for? We're looking for curious people who have an appetite for knowledge. And I really want to emphasize that we are looking for independent people. If you're the kind of student who needs the teacher to push them and to give them deadlines and to organize you, the EPQ is not the qualification for you. It's not managed in that particular way. We assume that you're adults and that you're able to organize yourself. So we're looking for diligent people. We're looking for people who really want to work. As I said a moment ago, this is purely voluntary. So you should not attend a class if you're not here to work. The minimum expectation, I'm going to be emphasizing this a lot, is that you are reading and researching 2 to 3 hours a week. And that would be the absolute minimum. You need to be reflective. You need to think about yourself and your learning. You need to be self-critical, and you need to want to get better. That's a key ingredient on the EPQ. You do need to be creative. You need to be daring. You need to be the kind of person who can go out and find out information, interview people, learn new research techniques, try new things. Now, there are 2 possible outcomes for the EPQ, and many of you know this. You can either write a 5,000-word research paper, and it's going to be a lot longer than that when we account your appendices, which you're going to find out later. Or you can write an artifact, and I'll speak about that in a moment. For the research paper, you're going to need to read above 20 journal articles. So I'm not talking about newspaper articles, I'm talking about proper academic articles. And that's why I say you need to be able to research at least 3 hours a week. And over the summer, you will be writing about 3,000 words. Before that, you'll have finished 2,000 words in class and obviously some of it at home. You will use academic referencing for this. So you'll be using citations, either the Oxford or the Harvard method. You'll be devising your own research question, your own research strategies. And alongside this, you will keep a detailed research log. We call this Project Q in DESC, and I will be showing you a short video later to introduce this. Now, it's possible to make an artifact and to have at least a 1,000-word report. Now, if you are someone who thinks that 1,000 words is going to be enough, you're wrong. If you wrote 1,000 words, you would get nothing beyond a C. So even on an artifact, we'd be looking for about 3,000 words minimum. This is an artifact here. In fact, this was one of my first artifacts in my last school. An artifact is when you conduct a great deal of research, just like you would on a research paper, and you make something and you test it and you keep a very detailed record of exactly how you did this. So don't think that the artifact is an easy option. In many ways, I think it's more complex. I personally love the artifacts most because they're very exciting. They can be everything from dresses to sports science devices, to drones, to computer programs, to paintings, to dances, to novels. The list is endless, as long as there is a very clear research base, which is equal to the research that would go into a 5,000-word report. Artifacts have to be evaluated. This is a really important idea. So the artifact must have a purpose. The purpose could be to educate people, to raise awareness, or just to work. The point being is that the artifact has to be tested and shown to be fit for purpose. So for many of you, the artifact will be unfamiliar. I'll be talking to you, and your EPQ tutors will be talking to you all the time about why artifacts are interesting. And as many of you know, I'm Mr. Flynn. You can make an appointment with me anytime you want to discuss an artifact, because as I said, I have a particular passion for artifacts. Now, the EPQ is a form of project-based learning. That means that it tries to be like real-world learning. It is motivated by a spirit of inquiry. It is about student voice and choice. There's a collaborative element in that you have a supervisor, and you can also work with specialists in the field. Many students, especially when they're doing artifacts, will interview doctors, surgeons, motorbike mechanics, you name it. You can work with anybody. And I think another absolutely key element of the EPQ is the fact that there will be a public presentation. So you will present your work to the public, parents and teachers and other students in desk, and this is a very exciting part of the EPQ, and you will end with a long reflection section where you write about what you've learned about yourself as a learner. So I'm not going to kid you, there is quite a lot of work here. But the point being is that it's genuinely exciting. School is usually about being told what to think and what to learn, if we're absolutely honest. The EPQ is this opportunity for you to choose your subject, for you to drive the learning, for you to roadmap the way that you want it to be. And in that sense, if you're someone who's looking for some kind of freedom, this is the qualification for you. You will be signing a contract, and this contract will be sent to your parents. Much like the BTEC, we have very, very strict rules about how much help we're allowed to give you and how much independence there should be, as well as the fact that you will need to maintain minimum standards of work. This is only fair. Teachers at desk work extremely hard, and the EPQ is something additional for many of them. We have to protect their time and to make sure that the students who've selected the EPQ are the right people for the EPQ. It's very important when you sign this contract that you read it, because we will take it very seriously, and you will not be allowed to remain on the course if you are not meeting our requirements, both to see your supervisor and both to prepare for the lessons, finish all tasks, and make sure that you are keeping abreast of all of your work in the sixth form. Now, the assessment procedures in the EPQ are very different. Some of your grades will be how you manage your time, which is exactly why if you're independent, you'll score a high grade. If you're not independent, you might as well drop the EPQ because you're going to get a bad grade on manage, which is all about identifying objectives and sticking to them. You get a grade for your use of resources. Very excitingly, you get grades for problem solving, for critical thinking, and for showing creative planning. And finally, for AO4, Assessment Objective 4, you will get grades for reflecting on your learning, reflecting on your strengths and weaknesses, and showing evidence of learning from the project. The supervisor is somebody who you will choose, and I can help you do this. You should have regular meetings with them every 2 to 3 weeks. They will be doing a lot of the paperwork for you, but they will not necessarily know about your subject. So you might have a history teacher as your supervisor and your project is on quantum physics, which means that you will have to go out into the college and into the world using LinkedIn, etc., and find people who know about your subject. The supervisor will give you advice, they'll advise you on the presentation, they'll mark a draft of your report or your artifact for you, they will advise you, they'll annotate your project, but they will not teach you or give you information or do the work for you. So I must emphasize, if you are someone who likes to be spoon-fed and told what to do, the EPQ is not for you. As I said, you can get a technical mentor, that's somebody who has specialist knowledge, or you can have a consulting specialist, that's someone who could help you with CAD or using laser cutters, for instance, or something like that. This is really important. The supervisor won't chase you for work. The supervisor won't do the research for you. They won't find the resources for you. You need to find them. They won't plan the EPQ for you. And they're not allowed to do extensive editing and correction. That is not allowed. The college would get into trouble for that. So once again, I urge you to think, are you the right person for this qualification? Are you prepared to take on this challenge? Alongside the project, you will be working on a piece of software called Project Q, and this will be a record of all of your research and your ideas and your planning. It is as important as the report or the artifact. Keeping a really careful record of all of your planning, your thinking, your problems, your solutions, and your creative strategies will be absolutely crucial, and I'll be telling you a bit more about that in a moment. Project Q, you will not start until you have successfully got onto the EPQ. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about that now, because in term 2 is when I will get you all working on Project Q if you're successful. Briefly, Project Q is a piece of software that I, the supervisor, and you can look at. And it allows me to check that you are going through all the necessary stages of planning and recording your ideas, because as I said, this will be a vital element of the actual assessment. Now, this is a training video on Project Q. I won't be showing this time, but this is something that we will be working on in the second term. Moving on. I'm going to be showing you a really interesting video from Southampton University that actually advertises some of the benefits of the EPQ. I think you'll find it very interesting.
Out with a research project is to look at what's happening around them.
So you want it to be interesting, something that's going to motivate you.
So make sure it hasn't been asked before.
Be realistic.
Spend quite a bit of time defining the question.
So I think you need to ask a question that's actually falsifiable.
Because they're going to know what their experience is, they're going to know what's important to them.
So you need to be a bit honest as well.
If possible, ask an expert for advice. If you're not working in a sensitive area of research, that might be a useful way to get some tips.
So talk to the participants or potential participants, talk to staff, read the literature and go from there.
Because that will help you focus all of your efforts when you actually get into doing the research.
I don't think there is one research tool that I use.
It's not just about asking someone to write in a diary, in a notebook.
I like to compile lots of data.
Very often we don't have to look outside of us to try and find the best research tool.
I think it depends on what the topic is.
There are so many possible research tools out there now. Of course, the internet is a major source of information, but we have to be very careful.
I find mind mapping exceptionally useful.
The best research tool is always the brain.
What would work with academics and staff in healthcare wouldn't already work with patients. So it very much depends on what you're doing, when you're doing it, how you're doing it, and that's about seeking lots of advice before you start.
So it's a really flexible, versatile research tool.
So straight away, what you'll notice is there's a whole variety of opinion from the University of Southampton about how to start your topic and what research to use, etc. The reason why I showed you that is I want you to see that there is not one path in the EPQ. There will be many different paths. You're at the point now today where you're starting a topic. Some students have already expressed anxiety to me and said, oh, I don't know what to do yet. That's absolutely fine. We want you not to decide immediately, but first of all, to do a deep dive into some kind of research. Now, a good place to start is with the sheet that you will find on the SharePoint site, starting to think of a topic. So you could think about things that have interested you in the past, areas of personal interest, topics you've already studied, and this is the key bit. How would you extend them? Because the most important thing about the EPQ is it has to be different from work that you've studied formally. So for instance, if you studied photosynthesis in biology, you would not be allowed to do an EPQ in it unless it went well beyond the topic or that you did in a research project that was different from what had been done previously. So this idea of avoiding duplication of curriculum is one of the things that I, as the coordinator, need to look at really carefully. So you have to start a new or original field, or a field in which you are extending out of the topic quite significantly. Now for your task today, I'm going to ask you to start filling in the sheet or to take some notes. Initially, you don't need to worry about being quite broad. Just put down some ideas for things that really interest you. That's the key thing. You will not finish the EPQ unless you are genuinely curious about what you choose. So don't choose something because you think your parents would like it or your teachers. It really does need to be yours. So think about anything that you've read before, come across that's of particular interest to you, and think about how you could extend your knowledge and really decide something that makes you curious. I'm going to stop the video and I'll get you to do that for at least 15 minutes. Now you've had some time to think about this. I would like you to share some of your ideas with a partner or with a small group and start to discuss some of these questions. Are your ideas too broad? For instance, have you written down that you are really interested in Roman history, and quite clearly you can't study all of Roman history. You're going to need to focus in on a very specific idea. Can you think about ways that you might want to narrow them down? So you're interested in Roman history, you've read a little bit about Julius Caesar, you found out that it's alleged that he killed over 1 million people in Gaul in modern day France. Is that something that you've heard about? Would you like to narrow your question down in that kind of way? The important thing about doing a research question, not an artifact, is that it needs to actually answer a question. So if you're thinking about Julius Caesar, you're thinking about the Romans, could you have a question like, is there evidence that Julius Caesar committed genocide in Gaul, for instance? So that will then lead to this question. Is there an argument or a discussion? Because the key idea in the EPQ is there must be an argument between two different views. So if you find something that you're interested in, for instance, like the Second World War, and you might want to ask a question like, is it true that Russia ultimately defeated the Nazi forces? There will be arguments for yes and arguments for no. So even though this is early, you start to think about, is your EPQ idea feasible? And I'm going to say a little bit more about artifacts in a moment because they are a little bit more complicated. Now I've included Bloom's taxonomy because this is absolutely key, not only to the EPQ, to a lot of thinking. You will know that when you remember things or even understand them, just factual things, that is not considered a very high skill. The really top skills are when you apply your knowledge, when you analyze, in other words, break things down, evaluate, say what is good or bad. And at the top of Bloom's taxonomy is the idea of being creative. In your EPQ question, one of the things that you'll talk to your supervisor about is, Will your question get you to the top of the mark scheme where you are showing these higher skills rather than just describing things and giving lots of facts and explaining? This idea of evaluating and analyzing and creating, this will be a very important thing as you go through your EPQ journey, because these are the skills that will get you the grades. Now, my key message today is you need to start reading. We will not fill in these initial ideas until about week 4 or 5, but you need to be reading every lesson. So you need to go from here and spend 2 to 3 hours researching and thinking. If you found out a little bit about Julius Caesar, start to read now in a lot more detail. You need to also save your links and to start to save all the sources that you are using. This will be absolutely key in the EPQ, because everything that you do is going to need to be backed up and evidenced by research. Now, finally, and you could even start looking at these in the lesson today, here are some amazing websites with EPQ ideas. I don't agree with all of them, but you could just have a look at some of these. 600 ideas, 1400 ideas, 400 ideas, I think there are 150 here, etc. And there's a website here on artifact ideas as well. I really strongly suggest that you look at some of these websites and start to think really carefully. We have a number of weeks before we commit ourselves, but I would urge you to realize that you need to be working on this all the time, or you will not succeed. Finally, I've created a little video for the EPQ SharePoint site, which I will now embed into this presentation. Hello everyone, just a brief look at the new EPQ SharePoint site. The address you can see up here, it's linked to all of the other new DES SharePoint sites. First of all, this is very important. I've put together 36 different EPQ videos. I'll be adding to them over the year. So it would be very good if you could subscribe to my EPQ channel. I'm not just trying to get my viewing figures up. I've organized them into playlists, and the one that should interest you here would be this particular playlist here for the EPQ. As you can see, it covers virtually every element of the project, from how to finish Project Q to starting off with research questions and initial ideas. So that would be very, very valuable for you. Okay, going back to the SharePoint site itself, all of the lesson material can be found in this particular section by terms. There are 4 terms. The 4th term would be when you're in year 13. The completion date for the EPQ is year 13 November, so that you are able to put it on your UCAS form. I have an enormous section that I put together on many artifacts, all different types of artifacts, from films on philosophy to drones to paintings to what else have I got here, to Hansel and Gretel, which is a fantastic animation video made by a student. So some wonderful things there. If you're thinking about starting the EPQ and you're looking for ideas, wonderful place for artifact ideas there. There's a section on the presentation evening. This is very important for you, especially when you're starting off. There are many different, hundreds and hundreds of different projects inside here, and I've organized them in terms of subject. So if you're looking for one on medicine, for instance, or law, history, geography, the environment, there are many different ones to look at. Obviously, you can't take someone's title from previously, but you could use it as inspiration for your own. There's a section here on structuring the report. Another excellent part of it is all of the videos that have been made by DES students who give you particular advice on elements of the EPQ. Myra Ahmed here has done one, I know, on looking at the report. Matthew Bradley here has done one on his EPQ presentation technique, etc. So another wealth of information to be found there. So have a look around the EPQ SharePoint site, pin it to your the top of your bookmarks. This is a very interesting graph that should give you some inspiration. You'll see research by Manchester University shows that EPQ students get 1 degree class higher than non-EPQ students. So I think that should really inspire you. So please, as I say, pin the SharePoint site to the top and make sure that you use it very often. I hope you find it useful. Thank you. Now, finally, you have some ideas, and we're only right at the beginning. So you have a lot of homework to do. And most of that homework is going to be think time, going away and genuinely thinking about something. You're also going to need to find a teacher to work with. And that's going to be your job. If you're new to the school, I'll help you. But for most of you, you can find any teacher. If they don't know about the EPQ, tell them that I will train them. Their key idea is not to do any work or reading for you, but just to discuss things with you. So they should find it interesting. You could begin mind mapping some of your ideas or potential titles. But the most important thing, and this is what I want to end on, is that you need to read and research for 2 to 3 hours a week in the first term in particular. Because by the end of the term, remember, you will have to have a research proposal, and I will want to see that you have read at least 10 to 12 articles. So it's really important after every EPQ session that you go and you start reading. I hope that you're interested in the course. If it's not the right course for you, I will not be upset or offended. You need to prioritize your A-levels or your BTECs. Only do this EPQ course if you believe that it is good for you.